Good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Saturday, January the 13th, and we have Miss Pamela Ann with us to do a interview on the effects domestic violence has on families. Um, I am Vernita Howard. I am the founder of SWAT. I am the host of Pain to Purpose, and we're here to bring you information that you can use each and every day. And if you notice someone in one of these situations, you will be able to help them. We have conversations from people who have lived day to day or have seen or been affected by abuse. But in this year, we will be focusing more on transformation and release because even though you've been through it, this can be just a stepping stone. But we want you to transform, release all that you've been through, and through your transformation, you will be a completely different person. So this morning, Miss Pamela, can you introduce yourself to the people?
Hey, good morning. My name is Pamela Blunt. I am a 20-year advocate against domestic violence and sexual assault. I've traveled the country pretty much sharing my story as a child witness of domestic violence. And recently I got to add the title of author to the end of my name. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the journey. Just wrote this book, sharing my story for those who don't get to hear me say it verbally. They can just pick up a copy and hear my story. And I'm happy to be here with you guys today.
Thank you so much, Miss Pamela. So let's just jump right into this conversation. So you know that I'm super excited about you being an author. So I've gotten to hear your story a couple of times, and I follow you on social media. So just seeing all that you are doing and all that you have done, I'm so proud of you. I just want you to know that.
Likewise.
So let's talk domestic violence. Can you give the viewers your definition of what domestic violence is?
Um, I don't necessarily have a definition of domestic violence, but what I want people to know and understand about it is that it's just not physical. It's more than black eyes and busted lips. That there is a lot that comes under the umbrella of domestic violence. So when we're talking about the subject, we need to understand that it's also emotional or psychological. Financial. A lot of people who are dealing with domestic violence, that financial piece is key to whether or not they are able to leave and thrive. So we're talking about the psychological impact, the financial impact. Hey, let's add spiritual to that. And a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know, realize that, you can be in a domestic violence relationship, never be hit, never be called the B word, but there's that spiritual piece to it. What do you mean, Pam? You are not allowed to go to anybody else's churches except for your partners, whatever church you guys attend. You're not allowed to do that. And so even in that aspect, oftentimes we see where the abusers will try to gauge that, how you build your spiritual relationship with God. There's so many pieces to it, the family piece to it. And when we talk about domestic violence, a lot of times people just naturally assume, I was that person, that it is between a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. But we have to let people know that it can also be between a mother and a daughter, a father and a son. So that it is so broad. So the definition of it, to me, it just cannot be defined because it seems like it's changing every day because there's
Right.
a piece being added to it so often. But I want people to keep in mind that there's so many pieces to it. And it's not just physical like we all grew up to believe. It's a lot more to it than that. But what it is, that the key component to domestic violence when we're talking about it is this thing called power and control.
Mm-hmm.
When someone is trying to usurp power and control over you, you don't have the authority to make your own decisions. You don't get to decide what you wear when you want to go out with your girls. You don't get to decide. I've met women who have not even been allowed to have a debit card. So you're not in control of the finances, even though you work 40 hours every week and you contribute to the finances of the home. You don't know where the money go, and you just do as you're told. Oftentimes they're told, you go to the grocery store, bring back the receipt because you have to be a account. You have to account for every single penny. So it is, again, it is broad. There's an umbrella here that we walk under when we are talking about this subject.
And I'm glad that you pointed out spiritual abuse. I
Yeah.
know you stated the partner controlling you, of where you can worship, but we also have to talk about spiritual abuse where the leaders
Oh, whew.
of the leaders of the faith base, have power and
Mhm.
control over the thoughts of the people.
Mhm.
Meaning, you're not able to go anywhere else and worship unless you get approval.
Permission. Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Um,
I've been a member of several churches like that,
so,
several, and I
yeah.
never understood it because if you are, and this is just to take a side road, and this is just my opinion, people, so take it with a grain of salt. But I believe that we are all part of the body,
Mm,
and we all the Bible says that we every part fitly supplies. So
mhm.
if I'm a part of this body and I'm just the hand, then and if I never go over and I never talk to the head or the arm or the feet, then
Yes.
I am missing something. There is going to always be a deficit in my life because I'm not getting what the hand and the feet supplies. And am I saying that you need to be at somebody else's church every other Sunday? No, that's
No.
absolutely not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that we have to have an understanding that we are all in this thing together because we
Mhm.
are all the body and we need what each other supply. And anytime somebody says to you, you can't go to the head, you can't go to the arm, that's an issue. That's definitely a red flag because people like us, Vernice, we know and we understand. I need Vernice. We don't go to the same church. Like we need
Right.
each other. And it's
Exactly.
sad. It's always sad to me. And I tell people because my sister's a minister, but I tell people all the time, it's sad that we will sing songs that says, I need you, you need me. But then at the same time, it's just like, but I can't, we can't fellowship together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so even with me being a minister, yes, I do go to my pastor when I'm asked to go different places because he's my covering. And so I want him to cover me. So I want to put it out there.
Yeah.
Not that we're saying that you shouldn't, because we all need covering. But if you can never go anywhere, and sometimes, our leaders will see something that we don't even see.
Right.
But if you're not able to fellowship with anybody else unless your pastor is right there, there's an issue.
That's
You
an issue.
know, and sometimes they don't want to talk about spiritual abuse because it's happening in the church. So I believe in
Well,
keeping it
statistics
real.
tell us
This is
that.
what this is about. We keep it real. We Because you see things, and so we just have to be honest with people, and just uncover. We can't just tiptoe around and say, oh yeah, it's spiritual abuse, but not go into detail. You know what I mean? And so I'm a strong advocate. And a lot of times some of the, you know, pastors and different things, like, why would you bring that up?
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah,
get it all the time, but at
yeah.
the same time, I cannot ignore the fact that it's happening because I get a lot of women, first ladies and deacons' wives, and
Mhm.
we know and we understand we're mature enough, especially people like us who've been doing this for a long time. We know and we understand that anytime that there's a position of power and authority, we have to be in constant check of those people because statistics tells us, and this is not a statistic that I myself came up with, but this is a fact that when it comes to the top three abusers, we have military, police, and then we have men in ministry.
Mhm.
And people don't want to believe that, but it's true. And we know that it's true. My inbox says that it's true. It tells me that it is true. But anytime
Right.
we look at a position of power and authority, hmm, hmm,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So like I said, we see it. So another one that you talked about was the financial abuse. And that was something different for me because I didn't realize that I didn't realize until I started advocating and really doing the research that there was a such thing as financial abuse.
Mhm.
Like I worked, but I wasn't in control of my funds, you know?
Right.
I remember my prior, because not this marriage, but my prior marriage, I remember working, but I didn't have control of the funds. I was
Right.
given an allowance.
Mm.
So, but being young, being married, I thought that was okay because I was like, okay, he's handling the bills. But I didn't realize that, um, even in our bills at the time, purchasing makeup was a bill. And it was a bill because he knew what he was going to do. His actions will result in hitting me, abusing me, but he wanted me to keep it covered. And
Wow.
so makeup became a bill for me. And
Wow.
and so a lot of times, as young people, you'll think, well, I seen daddy take care of the bills, or whatever. But we really need to stress to our young people, what financial abuse looks like,
Mhm.
and how it affects us.
And even and another dynamic to that is to be financially stable. Do you know how many people refuse to come out of domestic violence situations because they are financially stable? And
Hmm.
and a lot of these people, that's being held over their head. Well, if you leave, you're not taking this car, or you're not going to have anywhere to live, and I'm not paying you child support, or all of those things. So even to be in a place where you have the money, you make the money, you can use the money while you're there, but you have to, the abuse that comes with it has to be acceptable too, because you have all of these things. I've sat in people's homes whose husbands play for the NBA and the NFL, and they're being abused, and I'm saying, like, to the point of death. And the victim still refuses to leave because they don't want to leave. And I get it. I absolutely get it. And I think about my situation and my story, and my mother, who didn't have any money. But at the same time, like, where do you take 4 kids? Who's going to take you in with 4 kids? Who's going to let you come live there with 4 kids? No mother wants to be homeless with her children. So I get it. So when people are asking, well, why do these women stay? That's a
Hmm.
big reason. That's
Yeah.
one of the biggest reasons that I see, is because they know that financially they will not be able to make it and sustain a livelihood for themselves and their children. So they stay in these situations.
Hmm. And a lot of times you'll find that families say, "Oh, you could come stay," but what comes with saying, I'm leaving one abusive relationship to get into another one. The only difference is, I'm not with my partner now, I'm with my family.
And it's worse. It is, to me, it's worse. Like, I remember us having to do that. And I remember, like, so I don't know if you read the book, but I talk about in the book how after my mom, we lost my mom, that I made my little cycle, my rounds with my family members. And I can remember sitting in rooms and hearing conversations about how much they did not want me there.
Wow.
How, like, a kid who just lost her mom, have to endure this. And I can remember, even before my mom passed, and I talk about that in the book as well. I can remember us walking up to my mom's mother's house, and knocking on the door and asking for help, and asking if we could come in and just spend the night and just have somewhere to sleep, if only to be turned away. So sometimes family, they,
Yeah. Hmm.
and that is why that family piece of domestic violence, and a lot of people don't want to understand that part right there. Like, how is that, that I've had a lot of my family members ask me, well, why did you write about that in there? Like, that has nothing to do with domestic violence. And I'm like, it has
It
absolutely
does.
everything to do with it. It
Right.
is domestic
It
violence.
is. Yeah. And that's because for years people were so programmed that if it wasn't someone physically hitting you,
Yeah.
you know, um, it was an abuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And family, this is where generational curses. We need to talk about this stuff and Bring it out. Stop sweeping it under the
Mhm.
rug and just assuming that everything's going to be all right. And what happens and what people don't understand is when things like that happen in a family and you try to succumb it or push it to the back of your brain, it causes you
Mm.
it caused you to be hurt even more. And then they wonder why when things happen you are quick to shoot off with an attitude or whatever. It's because of the crap that y'all have put us through, or because of what has happened and not having that outlet to
Yeah,
talk.
yeah. Or in my case, what I'm seeing now is, well, you haven't talked about it in 40 years. Well, why are you talking about it now?
Mhm.
Or just like,
Because I
well, we
dealt
all
with
got
it for
over it.
40 years.
Yeah,
I
and people
just dealt
naturally
with
assume, like, we're, as humans, we naturally assume that because, well, Pam is still being nice, Pam is still being cordial. She must have forgotten what happened, and then when it's like, oh, well, you know what, I'm healed enough to talk about this thing, let me talk about it, then it's like, why would you want to do that? Why would you write this book? Why would you say the stuff in the book that you said?
Mhm.
And I'm like, that was part of the journey.
Right. And
It is
that's part of your healing as well.
part of the healing. But yeah,
Mhm.
people are not that concerned with with you healing. I've come to learn people are not. People are okay with you being downtrodden. They are okay with you being in a place where you feel forsaken. As long as it don't cross over into their world.
Right.
As long as my sadness don't cross over into you, as long as my poverty don't cross over into your world, as long as my whatever I'm needing to be whole don't cross over into someone else's world. Like, we're not concerned. So even with DV, and we see it all the time. Yolanda Carter's on the phone. We see it all the time. People are not concerned with DV. I post every day.
Yeah.
Domestic violence suck, and this is why. And people say, "Can you just stop talking about that so much?"
Yes. I truly understand.
And then the same
Um,
people, as soon as it's their daughter, here they come in my inbox.
calling. Yeah.
It's like, oh, my daughter is, and now I want to advocate. And you know what? And I have to say, well, good. We're going to do the same thing for your daughter that we would do for anybody else's daughter. But you know what? I remember you told me to shut up now.
Hmm.
But that's how it is. When it comes to DV, nobody wants to talk about it. And that,
Right.
I always start every conversation that I have with young people, and I say, you know what, Big Mama got it wrong. Because when they were telling us, you don't go out of this house telling our business. What happens in this house stays in this house. So when we're talking about the family, we all jacked up because Big Mama told us a lot of stuff that was
Hmm.
not true. Meanwhile, Big Mama is getting her head knocked in. Her children are getting their heads knocked in. Now their children are starting to get their heads knocked in. And we're still holding on to what Big Mama said. Sweep it under the rug. Don't go out of here telling our business. You know what? I'm just going to deal with this thing. And meanwhile, we are losing what? At least 2 women every week to domestic violence
Yeah.
because Big Mama told us that. And nobody want to look at Big Mama and check Big Mama and tell her, you know what? You are the reason why I am here. Can we deal with this root so that we can cut this thing off at the root? And that
Mhm.
all of the other people, when my family started coming at me about this book, the one thing that I said to them was this: can we all heal so that we can make sure that the next generation is not as damaged as we are?
Ooh, that's deep.
And that's the purpose of it. That was
Hmm.
the sole purpose of writing the book, of me going out for the past 20 plus years, sharing what happened with my mom. That's the whole purpose of it, is to make sure that my children and their children and your children and other people's children are not as damaged as we were, because we had to hold on and internalize all of this stuff. And meanwhile, our insides are rotten because
Yeah.
we have so much anger and bitterness and hatred. And we're doing stuff, we're doing drugs, we're drinking, we're promiscuous, and we're using every tool that the enemy gives us to use to become anything other than what God has said that we should be.
Mm. Ooh, yes. Look, I don't normally get speechless, but I got real speechless right in. Like, because I'm just taking it all in. And I remember when I started the organization, I was told that, if you're forgiving him or you forgiving them, why do you still want to speak about it?
Mm.
Like, just
Yeah.
let it go.
Let it go.
Um, you know, that it's an embarrassment, and that was my thing to God. Like when He was like, I don't need an event. I need you to, because I know that you will work and you will become, the advocate that I need you to be.
Yeah.
And so I said, God, I don't even like talking to people. Now you want me to tell these people my business. Like, God, I'm still ashamed of this.
Mm.
And but yet you want me to go in and like tell the world, like, hey, I've been beat, I've been bruised. I done been through this. Why do you want me to tell people? And he said, because I have work for you to do. And I didn't understand it. And I had to like just constantly like go back and forth with him, like, like God, like seriously. So now you want me to not just tell a few people, but a lot of people, tell
The whole world.
the whole world that, I used to get beat on,
Mhm.
them keeping the face flawless with makeup wasn't because I truly wanted to, it's because I had to, you know, God, I was ashamed to walk around with the black eyes and,
Mm.
and not be able to deal with my family because, during that time you want to isolate yourself so you
Right.
can heal and nobody see. But yet you want me to tell everybody? Like, are you sure you don't want somebody else to do
Mhm.
this? But now I understand. Because it was part of my healing. And I
Yeah.
remember what a lot of people didn't understand when I was going through and I had left. And sometimes I would have to come in through the back end of my job. I would have to call security. They bring me in through the back end because I wanted to keep everybody else safe. I didn't even realize that I wanted, everybody else to be safe
Mhm.
because I knew what he was capable of doing. And I was so scared. I didn't want to be embarrassed, like in front of my coworkers. But at the same token, like security knew, everybody knew, and they was doing what they could to keep me safe.
And that is so important too. And I want people to catch hold of that, because when we're talking about domestic violence and we're talking about the effects of it, what you just said is very important, because when we talk about workplace violence, it is
Mm.
the number one cause of death in the workforce is domestic violence. And so talking about it, we now get to see this morning. First thing this morning, we get to know and we get to hear that this thing not only affects you, your children, the people in your household, but now it's crossing over into to work and
Mm.
and other places that we go. So I say that to say this, that this is something that affects across the board. From the
Mm.
time that you wake up to whatever you're doing throughout the day, everybody is affected or impacted by it, because you don't know when that person just may snap and come to the restaurant you're at, or you don't know if they're going to come to the library, because we see it all the time. And then it crosses over into the workplace. Like, it affects
Mhm.
everybody some type of way. When COVID hit, I remember watching a special that was talking about how people who are not normally impacted by domestic violence are now being impacted by it. And you guys probably saw the stats on it too. I know where I worked at, we were seeing a lot of equipment being broken because of it. We were seeing, people are on call. And there was one particular story that I remember seeing of a teacher, a young lady who was teaching kids. She gathered neighborhood kids. All of them would come to her house that morning, and they would sit at her house, and they would get their laptops out and do their work. Well, this one particular morning, while all of this is happening, her boyfriend comes in and he shoots her 10 times.
Mm.
So now the neighborhood kids who have never seen their parents fight, the teacher who's on the call, who's teaching the students who have never experienced domestic violence, other students who are watching are now seeing domestic violence in action. So all people who never even had an experience with it on a personal level are now seeing it. So now the teacher has to go to therapy. All of these kids, they got to figure out a way to get some help for them. Domestic violence is just one of those things that don't discriminate. It don't care.
Don't care.
It
Does
don't care your
not care.
status. It
It
don't
don't.
care what your social economic stance is. It don't
It
care
don't
what
care your
color you are.
color. It
It
don't
don't
care
care.
nothing. Your
It don't
religious
care.
aspect, nothing.
No,
It
it
do
don't. It
not
don't
care.
care how old you are.
That's right.
It absolutely. I don't know if you guys saw the story of PTSD. High up mine too, Yolanda. And that's another thing too. And I'll tell the story later. But this PTSD part, whoo, child.
Ooh,
Oh, and
yeah.
that's why when I'm in the schools, and they're talking about these kids who are now, starting to act out and do all of this kind of stuff, and I'm like, we need to establish if it's PTSD or is it ADHD, because really
Yeah.
they look the same. So some
And
of these kids who have witnessed this stuff in the home, who are suffering from PTSD, but yet being diagnosed with ADHD, we missing it.
mhm. And that's why it's so important when children come to you and confide in you. I just had this conversation with one of my Facebook friends. Um, we want to dictate the age a child can be going through depression or stress, but it's depending on what's going on in that home.
It depends on what's
They
going
could really be going through because of what is happening in the home. And when abuse is in the home, we have to understand that when we're going through abuse, it affects our children.
It affects our children. Can you imagine your child developing I'm trying to read all the comments and stuff and talk at the same time. But what about the children who now have a love-hate relationship? Can you imagine having to try to deal with that and go to school and make good grades, and you
Right.
haven't slept all night because all you hear is the arguing, the fussing and the cussing and the fighting, and now your teachers are wondering why you're so sleepy at school, and you got to deal with all of that too. You got to deal with
Mhm.
the challenge of keeping your mom or your father's secret. Like, man, it is absolutely crazy. These children are experiencing something, and that is one of the key reasons why I decided to do it. Because I met a little boy at an event one day who came and grabbed me by my legs after sharing my story, and he said to me, his mother sitting there, his mother was the minister's daughter, and he said, I don't want my mom to die the same way your mom died.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
he's just holding me, he's bawling, he's crying. And then he says, goes on to say, he says, my mom beats my mom, my dad beats my mom. And the mom just breaks down and she just starts crying.
Mm.
These children are witnessing some stuff in these homes, and we're talking about what, 8 million children in just the US, 35 million children worldwide,
Mhm.
experiencing and watching and hearing. And we naturally assume, well, just because they're not in the same room, that it don't affect them. Ma'am,
It
I
does.
share in my book about how we would sit there and we would count the number of times that we would hear my mom's head hit the wall.
Jeez.
How do you grow up and be a productive member of society when all you know and all you see is violence?
Mhm. And even like to piggyback off that, I remember my oldest daughter, like she would have seizures so bad. But I realized that it was because we couldn't, as adults, we couldn't have a sensible conversation in front of her. Like when I would talk to her father, it was just straight, we was at each other, you know what I mean? And like normally if we would have a conversation or whatever, and that wasn't even a conversation, but a yelling match and everything, it affected our children. And so now that I sit back and I remember taking her to Chapel Hill, and the doctor walk in and I'm trying to tell him, mind you, he didn't help get her there, but I'm trying to let him know what's going on. And we go into this yelling match. Like the doctor come in and he said, hang up. He said, um, if you don't want me to get a social worker involved, I've been at never walk in here and here, because my daughter started going into convulsions because of it. And he said, look at He said, I don't know what you're going through, but look at what's happening to your child.
Wow.
So, you know, I really didn't understand it then, but after doing research and just really thinking back, and I'm like, man, you know, I didn't have to answer the phone. You know what I mean? It's like different things I could have done to avoid it, but also look at how, again, it don't just affect you; it affects your entire household. And as parents, we do a lot to try to hide from our children. It ain't no hiding.
No
Some
hiding.
good detectives are your children at a young age because they listen and they pay attention
Yeah.
to everything that you do. And they pay attention to your body language. And when you're going through, the things that you say to them. So we don't see it as abusive, but if you're taking out what just happened in your room on them,
Mm-hmm.
you're being abusive.
Yeah.
Even though you don't see it, oh well, I didn't hit them. And
They
I said,
definitely get a double whammy. The
yeah,
children definitely get a double whammy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, and that takes us to verbal abuse, a
Yeah.
nonverbal abuse, when we maybe they want to love and hug on us, and it's like, because of what I just went through, I don't want to say anything. I don't, you know, I don't want to be bothered. Yolanda said we normalize,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of issues,
We
and we
do,
do,
Yolanda. We
yeah.
do.
And so, what happens when, yeah, we didn't hit them, but we're not talking to them when they're trying to show us love, or we don't want to be bothered with them, and so we pushing them away non-verbally, but we're still abusing them because even though they're trying to show us love, we're pushing them off as if they're nothing. And so, as she said, we normalize this, like, this is okay. I'm just in my feelings right now. But what do that do to that child? What do that say to that child?
Yeah, I agree. Yolanda said that people don't realize the behaviors of the children is what they see in the home. Abuse going
Mhm.
on in their and they are witnessing it, and they
Yes.
acting out because of it. And I
Mhm.
was actually that kid, Yolanda. So I would go to school and I would fight every day, y'all. Just no reason whatsoever. I would fight. I was, oh gosh, I was bad. And it took me till now to realize that I was simply acting out what I saw in the home. I didn't need a reason to fight. I'd make up one, but just acting out, that was all I knew. All I
Yep.
knew was violence. And I'm, yes, it, so there, I'm the third of four, and each one of us kind of internalized it different. Now my oldest sister, she's always been that sweetheart, soft spoken, and she just wanted everything to be okay. And my youngest sister, she's like half and half. So she's half my older sister, half me. Like, she's the person that she's gonna always ride for me. So if I'm like, Angie, let's go over here and fight, she's like, okay, you my sister. And my brother, he so my brother actually lived with my father the entire time. So my mother was not, let me just say, my mother was not killed by my father. She was murdered by a boyfriend at the time. They had divorced. And so my brother always lived with my father. So he was completely different. He had the good life, which was, to us it was like the lifestyle of the rich and famous, because we're over here with mama struggling and living outside, and you're over there, you get a nice warm bed and all this kind of stuff. And just to see how DV impacted us so different. My youngest sister, every relationship that I've ever known her to be in was abusive.
Mm.
My brother, he chooses people that are abusive, but at the same time, he's on both ends of the spectrum. He's abused, and he's an abuser. My oldest sister, she just pretty much just kind of shut down and became, a hermit to herself, and don't show a lot of emotion when it comes to things like that. And then you have me. I'm mouthy. I'm radical. I'm a fighter. I'm the one that don't nobody like, and I don't care that they don't like me like you. So we all, it affected us all different, but there was an effect from it.
Mhm.
I wish people would see and understand that, just like Yolanda said, this thing affects children. Can you imagine being a child um, in these homes, and you're hearing all this every night? Like I
Mm,
sit back and I think, and sometimes I'll call my sisters and I'll say, "Did this really happen? Did we really experience this? Was this really a part of our lives?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, I lost my life." But like it's just so hard, especially when you are a child. And not only are we like not sometimes not receiving the emotional piece to it, or like the love, and sometimes we're receiving that, but at the same time we're having to keep the secret. And we're
mm,
some of the best secret keepers that there are. These children are keeping secrets, man. I sat with a little boy who was, I think he was probably in like third grade, and every day he would run out of the classroom at like 4 o'clock on the dot. Every day, run out, live right down the street from the school. And he'd run out of the classroom and he would run home because he had to get home to make sure that his mom was still alive.
jeez. Mm. And that's
Yeah.
a healthy responsibility for a child.
That's heavy. That has to be heavy. You sitting there, you're trying to focus, and you're trying to do your schoolwork and make good grades, and your mind is still stuck at home because you want to make sure that your mom don't die while you're at school, because you feel like some way somehow you can prevent her from dying if you're there. And my brother, that was my brother, and he struggled with not being there the night that my mom died, and he
Mm,
carried that thing throughout his whole life, and he would never talk about it, never say anything. It was not until 5 years ago my brother shared with us how he felt about that night.
mm. So I'm going to read this comment from Yolanda, and then we're going to transition into your book. She said, I didn't realize that every relationship has some form of abuse. It wasn't always physical, but I wasn't able to identify with it because I thought domestic violence abuse was black eyes and bruises. So I still thought I was in the best relationship, even though they weren't physical. They may have been mentally, emotionally, verbally, isolation, toxic, to say the least. I thought it was normal.
Oh, wow. The thing, and most people do, Yolanda. And again, that goes back to when you are young or you're in this situation and everybody around you is saying, like, I'm telling you, mothers make me sick. Mothers make me sick because we're the ones that says, baby, you better go back to that man because that man is paying all them bills, and yeah, he buy you all this nice stuff and all these nice clothes, and we push our daughters back to men that abuse them, and we know that our sons are abusive and we say nothing, and it just makes me sick. But it is I don't know, I lost my train of thought.
Mm.
That's how my children were. It was worse.
Yes, Yolanda has a story too, man. It's like so deep.
Yeah, I follow Yolanda. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is Yolanda I follow. I can't really see
Yeah.
her. But you know what? The stories are endless. The stories are endless. Like we have our work cut out for us, and so we have to make sure that we keep each other lifted and
Mm-hmm.
pray over each other, because as advocates, like we see some stuff that the world don't get to see because
See, mhm.
they keep turning a blind eye to this thing.
And we can't. Like I
Oh,
stress so hard. We cannot keep turning a blind eye. We cannot keep saying, oh, hearing the arguments and the threats, because eventually those threats become actions. And a bullet, so if your neighbors are arguing and he or she shoots, and you can be in your own home, it's your
mhm.
business. Because guess what? 9 out of 10, that stray bullet hit the innocent person, So then so then you don't want me to check on you because it's none of your business. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, um, we have to again, as you stated, what goes on in our household stays in our household. But if we hear something, we gotta say something.
We got to.
Whether we want to or not, we have to say something, because we don't know who can be affected by just being quiet, and the effects it has on, again, not just you, but those living in a house with you, those
Mhm.
living around you. Even though they don't say anything, it still may affect them in a way,
Yeah, yeah,
just because they're not telling you their story. But every time they hear you crying, every time they hear your head been knocked up against the wall, every
mhm.
time you're being called outside of your name, you don't know the trigger
Yeah,
that it could be
yeah.
having for that person. So
And
that's
those
why,
words are power. And I tell people all the time that words in itself, that they're powerful. Everything that when we look at creation, that words, God just spoke the words, except for man, he created us and he molded us. But words are so powerful, and words are seeds, and those seeds are going, and
yes,
those kids are internalizing those words. So when you have little Johnny, who's now in middle school, and he's choking out a girl, and he's sitting in the office, and this happened for real, and I was there, and he choked the little girl. And when he was asked, why did you do that, and he said, well, that's what my dad does to my mom when she doesn't listen. So those words are falling somewhere, and probably in the hearts of these children. And that's why we have to start early with these conversations. We got to start with you by 10 years old, we're seeing 10-year-olds go through stuff,
yeah,
experience stuff that I'm still trying to play football with my brother at 10, and wanted to climb trees and stuff. But these 10-year-olds nowadays, they are experiencing some things that was just so far-fetched from us when we were 10 years old. So we got to reach them early, and we got to start having these conversations about what a healthy relationship looks like, because most of us didn't have an example or a pattern. You hear people say all the time, well, I never saw my parents fight. Okay.
okay.
Like, okay, okay. But
That's what we say.
if we start early, if we get to them early, hopefully we can see, the numbers going down. But I think that's going to be key to it, is getting them while they're young, because DV is coming at them at a young
At
age
a
now.
very young age.
Mhm.
And to be honest, that's why when we have our events, and people say, "Oh, y'all talk about that in front of the children." Yeah.
Yeah, y'all fight in front of the children.
Yeah, right. Like, y'all fight in front of them. Y'all
Right,
just
Yolanda,
really help
we were
them.
outside playing all that stuff. These kids now, they get to they get to see, they see it at home. They go online, they get to see, hear about Chris Brown and Rihanna, and they get to these people are glorified, and their role models are doing it, and NFL full of it. And so all of the stuff that they are attached to,
They're seeing it.
is all this stuff. Yeah.
And
So we
then,
gotta figure out a way to counter it. And I'm telling you, we the battle is hard, but the battle is not ours.
that's
And so
right.
we know that as long as we stay in the fight, but we gotta work, because we got some advocates out here that's tripping too.
Okay.
Just thought I'd throw that in there. But we have got to do this work. I'm telling you, like, it ain't about, awards. It ain't about recognition. It's about
Mhm.
lives, because people are dying.
Dying.
People are dying from this thing. I mean, like, just freaking dying.
And
God,
that's what I tell people all the time. It's not about who gets the credit for helping. If
no.
we have to come together as, like, deep to help, just help, and I've always been, I just always been so big on that, like, and so now, just with, like, networking with other advocates, and just realizing, hey, I don't have to do all this by myself, and just pulling in, and hey, and hey, I got somebody here that's going through here. I can't, help. I don't want to lose them. I don't want to go
Yeah,
online and
yeah.
see RIP behind their name. Like, what can you do to help? This is what I can do. And as advocates, that's where we have to be. Our
Mhm.
compassion, our hearts have to truly be into it. You have to go back and remember where you were, you know, um, and that's why I fight so hard
Yeah.
and go so hard, because we was trained like, don't tell the white people your business. Don't get them involved.
Mm.
Just bringing another, So as we stated, abuse has no color.
It does not. It does not.
And,
You know
and
what? Um, so I do hospital advocacy, and let me tell you, when that victim is laying there and their back is split open because somebody just hit them in the back with an axe, they don't care if you're a black advocate. They just want somebody to sit there with their parent to tell them that it's going to be okay. And meanwhile, we're over here and we're playing around with it. We don't need a spotlight. We just need to do the work, because if while we out here playing around and we want to get the next award and we want accolades and all this kind of stuff, we are losing lives.
mhm,
We are losing lives, and more children are witnessing this
being
thing in the
affected.
home. We're not providing the resources that these people need to get out. We're not safety planning with these people, and we're losing people that we could have caught or we could have helped because we're too busy masquerading. I don't care that people know my story, and I get to say that I'm thankful that I've never been a victim myself. My I had an aunt tell me, well, you shouldn't go out telling. Yeah, I don't think your mama would be happy with you telling her business, ma'am. She ain't here, and it's my mama. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
it's my mama. She ain't here, so you know what? I'm
And
gonna
the
tell you.
accolades that we get, honestly, Pam, is when we are able to help that one person and,
Girl,
to go back and look at, like, yo, how that song say, you started from the bottom, now you here. So when I met you, you was but like, just to see them flourishing, and just living life that they're not used to living,
man, when you
thinking,
see that person walk into that apartment, even
yes,
and they just lay in the floor and they are so
it's
excited because this is a safe place and it's mine, and the children are running around and
right, yes, with
oh,
nothing in there, but
that for me right
they're
there.
happy,
That for
like,
me, it's
whew,
not only in October. You are absolutely right. It is a year long, all year long, and we have to fight all year long,
you're
Yolanda.
wrong.
We do, we do. If you only coming out in
In
October,
October, you're part of the issue.
come on,
You're part of the
come
issue.
on,
We
come
need
on.
you all year long.
We do, because
And we need
there really is strength in numbers, and that's why I
yes.
follow you guys, and I see what you're doing, and it's just like, just because I don't get to give you a high five in person, I am like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Grenada got it. Yolanda, she got it. They got it. Like
Yeah.
I'm just high fiving. So it's just like when people, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. All I know is that as for me and my life,
Mm,
I have committed myself to the cause. And I'm gonna fight, and I advocate mostly for children because that was me and I can relate to it more. But I've just made this my life's mission.
mhm.
And I trust God. The journey has been absolute. God is just amazing in
Amazing.
himself. In himself. So when we're talking about going from pain to purpose,
Mm-hmm.
you know, most of
Yes.
my life as a kid, I spent wondering, God, why would you take my mom? Why are we having to go through this? Now I get to see the bigger picture, and it's just like that why is gone. And even though I would love to have my mom back, but man, the havoc that just her name alone and her story is breaking on the domestic violence. I tell you, like I just look up sometimes and I'm like, Ma, I'm doing this for you. But
Yes.
God is good. And even in all of this, even through all of that, everything that we went through, My testimony is that the purpose and the plan that God has for my life
Oh,
outweighs anything that I've been through. It outweighs. I cannot sit here and tell you that I was motherless, because he was
mm,
truly a mother for me. He was a mother for the motherless. And
mm.
even when it was like, God, I still need, he would send women. He would
Woo.
send women to me to step into that role and to step into the position of mother. So I was never motherless. I was just without my mother. But he has, man, I tell you, it is to see the transition that has happened in my life. Because I'm telling you, like, I remember saying, I'll never serve this God that my grandmother was teaching us about after we went to live with her. I'll never do it. And even
Mm,
when my sister got the call, I was like, why would you want to, do the work for this guy
mhm.
who took our mom? And boy, I tell you, now now it's just like, whoa, I wish I had started sooner. But God is so good, and he has a way of mending the broken heart. He has a way, and he knew that, Pam, we got to get you to a place of healing, because all that fighting and stuff you doing in school, we need for you to fight for this thing right here. So
Mhm.
the way that I fought in school, I'm just as passionate about fighting for against domestic violence, and that's my mandate. That's why I know that that's what I'm called to do. I know that it is. And I know that God, man, this book, when you talk about you didn't want to go out and tell your story to the world because, you don't know how the people are going to look at you and how people are going to receive it. When God said, write this book, I'm just like, but why? Like, I'm already out talking about it. And he was like, no, I need for you to write this book. And I kept asking him, well, why do you want me to put this story in here? And why do you want me to put this story in here? And then when people started reaching out to me, and it was those particular stories that they were reaching out about, and it was like, God, I see it. I see it. And I'm just, what, I'll say this. I am thankful for a God who don't give us the whole picture, because
Mm,
he know that we will sabotage it.
yes.
Because if he'd have gave me the whole picture, I'd have been like, I ain't doing it. And I'd have left it at that. So I am just thankful that he on this journey, that because he knows the plan, and he told, when I read this when I was 10 years old, sitting in the floor at my grandmother's house, and he says, I know the thoughts that I think towards you, thoughts to do you
Ooh,
good, not evil, to give you a future and an expected end. I now get to sit back, and I said to my sister the other day, not too long ago, I said, you know what? I am actually walking out Jeremiah 29 and 11.
11.
I get to walk this thing out now. And people are like, what do you mean you get to walk it out? Because I'm walking in purpose now. I'm
That's
not walking in pain and hatred and bitterness and sadness and, you know, feeling lonely because I miss my mom. I am walking in a place where, oh my gosh, my steps are being ordered by God. And every step and every place, line upon line, precept upon precept, you're doing this thing, man. I'm telling you, he is doing
right.
it, and he's getting the glory, and people lives are being changed, and people are coming out. Order your book today. Yeah, all that. But
Yeah.
I'm grateful for it. So that's all I have to say about the book. I don't. I tried to go back and read it. I couldn't even read it. I couldn't even read it. But you know what? For the people that are reading it, um, the testimonies are awesome, and to God be the glory, and I give him all the glory, and I give him all the praise for what he's going to do in their lives just from reading something like that.
Mhm. And so it's so amazing to see how um, the transformation, like after you wrote the book, and it's just like this glow, and it's like a release, and it's like, I'm able to write it down, I'm able to tell it in a way that I don't have to keep all this bottled up on the inside.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, God, you allow this to just flow, and you allow me to write it,
He
and he
did. Like the day that I hit send to send it to be, I fell in the floor. I fell in the floor. It felt like somebody just took a house off my back,
uh-huh.
and it's just like, hey, it's out there now. Because I was still concerned about, what my family's gonna say. What are people gonna think about me when they read this stuff that's in this book? Now today, I'm just like, I
It
don't care.
is what it is.
I don't care. I only care what he thinks, and he already knew I did have the stuff I did in that book.
Yeah. And he orchestrated this. It's not by
Mm.
chance. It's not by will, but I love the book of Jeremiah 1:5. He
Oh,
knew
yeah.
when he formed you in your mama's
Oh,
belly, like what
girl,
you were gonna do,
he already knew it.
he already knew. And I spoke on purpose last week. So everything, we have to be focused on our purpose, and
Yeah.
we have to be focused on our healing. We have to be focused. And so this year with SWAT, everything is dealing with transformation and release, because we're releasing all that stuff that had us bound. We're
Mm,
letting it go, and we're allowing God to transform us into the advocates, into the survivors, just letting him transform us, with our healing,
mhm.
and so where there's release, where there's transformation, there's healing.
Yeah.
And our journey, our purpose is to advocate for those that are voiceless. For me, every time that I advocate, every time there's, I'm able to talk about domestic violence, I'm giving my son a voice.
Mm.
Even though his life was cut short, but homeboy is not voiceless. You hear me?
Right,
Because
right.
everybody who comes forth to tell their story, it's just adding light to my son, and so I don't take it lightly. And it just, listening to it and how you question God, because I question him. I hated him because he
Yeah.
took my son where I felt like I would have had the perfect family at the time, a daughter and a son. But yet you took him, and I did not understand. But now, like me and my father, we close. Like that's, I talk to him, and just to see how he's giving my son a voice without him
Mm.
actually speaking. So
Yes.
he's never nonverbal. He's the loudest person in the room, even though
I
you
was
don't hear
telling
him,
you.
he's loud.
That's what I
And
said
he's like,
about
okay,
Rebecca.
mama, go ahead. Do what
What's his
you
name,
do.
huh?
Christopher.
Christopher.
Yes. So, we just give him, I give God glory for everything. Um, if you guys have not ordered the book, make sure you order the book. It's When the Creek Cries. It's the Rebecca story, right?
Yes.
By Pamela. You can get it on Amazon. I'm gonna let her tell you everywhere else you can get it.
Oh, that's it. And
Okay.
you can reach out to me, or it's on Amazon right now.
Yes. So just get your book, guys. Let's support those that are doing the work, because the more that we get the information out, it might be something that make you understand, or make you realize that, oh my gosh, I've been through that. I did not realize it was abuse. I tell you that we go through a lot of things, even though we don't look like what we've been through. And that's because of the blessings we have upon our lives. And so, for you, Pamela, I'll tell you to keep soaring, keep doing what you're doing, keep advocating. We appreciate all that you're doing. We do not take it lightly. And God, she's actually coming our way. Um, to be on one, to be in person. So you didn't get everything today, but you'll get more. But I want you to be blessed, and I just thank you.
Thank
Make
you.
sure that you put all your contact information in the comments, so those that want to order, they can definitely order your book. But I thank you, I thank you, I thank you. Just continue to soar, and continue to allow God to use you.
Likewise, love. I appreciate you as well.
All right. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you, viewers, so much for tuning in. We pray that you get so much out of this, because if you didn't, I did. So you all be blessed and have an amazing day.